My talk for today is called You Are Always at Choice. You are always at choice. We, all of us, are always at choice. And I found this great quote, which I'm going to read to you. The most important spiritual growth doesn't happen when you're meditating or on a yoga mat. It happens in the midst of conflict, when you're frustrated, angry, or scared, and you're doing the same old thing, and then you suddenly realize that you have a choice to do it differently. Relationship has never been easy for me, thus 3 divorces. So I realized in being in relationship with Ash, I needed to do something different. I needed to be different. And so for quite a while now, I have been practicing that whenever I am mad at my wife for anything, I go and do something of service for her. That when I cannot say and speak in a gentle manner, at least for starters, I can simply go and be of service, and in that have a new choice around how I'm being. So, for instance, on Friday, when my wife and I had a disagreement about something and I got pretty upset about it, I remembered that her kids were showing up on Saturday. So I cleaned the kitchen, cleaned the bathroom, and threw out all the garbage so that her kids would have a good experience when they came over, and watched myself relax into that. It was a new choice. Now, sometimes, I then climbed into bed and went to wrap around my wife, which is what I do at night when I come to bed. And so these are the things that I have made a choice to do when I'm upset at my wife, to move me closer instead of further away. That's a choice. I could easily have chosen instead to not do any of those things because I felt trespassed by her. So that meant I didn't have to, I could get all huffy about it and go boo, 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 boo. Well, I don't owe her nothing. And, that thus 3 divorces. And so wanting this to be different, I had a different reaction. Not that I had a different reaction, and I want to be really clear about this part. Emotionally, I was upset. Now, did she really do something to trespass me and all that kind of stuff? That isn't even important. Did she really? What's really? The answer is no. It's impossible for one person to trespass another, no matter what it looks like. That's because we are not humans. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. It is only when we feel human that we think that's the reality that we actually get lost in the whole thing of, oh my God, I've been trespassed. Oh my God, the last president did all these horrible things. We can only think that way if we're thinking in the lines of a human experience. Or those who thought, oh my God, the election got stolen from this president I love, and so I need to go and do something about that. That kind of reaction comes from thinking we're actually human beings having a spiritual experience instead of spiritual beings having a human experience. So when I say that I'm upset at my wife and that she did something, it's because I'm coming from that human place and not remembering the truth of who she is, who I am, and that, of course, my wife is amazing. I have the most amazing wife ever. She has compassion and love, and she makes such a strong stand for people. And in the moment, I simply forgot that and get lost in whatever drama and story I'm telling myself. And maybe I'm not the only one that happens to. Maybe you have experiences where all of a sudden you're upset about something because you actually think that whatever happened, impacts you. And if you have that experience, you are at choice. Every single time we are upset about anything, we are at choice as to what happens next. Now, I notice for myself that when I have upset, it's because of my perception. That, they change your thinking, change your life. You got to change your perception. You got to dig a little deeper. I've heard a million times that emotions all come out of thoughts, that thoughts come first. Well, if that's true, getting to what some of those thoughts are in me is going to take a jackhammer, because I go as deep as I can and I can't find a lot of times what that beginning thought was. I think sometimes we just have feelings about what occurs, but we're still at choice, whatever the feelings are. And that's the key to our actions. That is the key to the beginning of bringing ourselves back out, is when we remember that. When we remember, we really have choice about this. We really have the ability to come out of this. We really have the ability to become more than this in this moment that I am feeling, really upset about, for whatever reason that's going on. So earlier in the week, Michael called me and he was really upset about what he thought I had done. Now, my perception on what had happened was completely different. But the thing that was beautiful, what made the whole thing absolutely wonderful, was him calling me back to say, I want to make a different choice here. And remember that we are, friends, that remember that we care for each other. And then had a very different experience of the exact same issue and conversation. He made a different choice. That's spiritual growth in the moment of conflict. That is a fantastic example of what's possible when we're upset, is to go, whoa, I can do this differently, even though I'm upset. Now, for me, my upset doesn't always go away right away, but that doesn't change my choices of being of service as I've been doing this so long, right? A couple of years now, that it's actually my go-to. I mean, you'd think that sometimes if the house isn't getting clean enough, Ash might start a fight with me because she knows the results of that is I'll clean. I'm just kidding. I don't think she really does that. I don't know. But that is become my go-to, making her tea every morning, because now we may have herbal teas every day that I put together for us that we then drink throughout the day. These are the ways in which I have found to make different choices with whatever might be going on with me. And giving you examples for what you can do for whatever might be going on with you. Being of service to the one you're upset at is the best way I can imagine to bring yourself out of that upset, to start possibly seeing a different perception, a different way of being with it all. That's what Michael did. And it was brilliant. Afterwards, I was so impressed by the conversation and what had happened, because that's what we've been teaching here. That's what's possible, and that's what helps us rise to being more than we have been. When we are willing to open to a new choice on how to be with our upset, with the conflict that's happening, with whatever might be going on. Yeah, in the prayer this morning, that Howard did before the service started, he was talking about a world that works for everyone. And I've been thinking a lot about that because there's a whole group of people who maybe didn't storm the Capitol, but didn't feel so bad that that happened. And in a world that works for everyone, there are 2 million or there are millions of people in our jails that the world is not working for. There are millions of people around the world is not working for. Now, we can say they're out, that we understand that they're God. We can say that we have compassion for them. But what choice can we make that can actually have the world work for them too? Because they wouldn't be acting out if the world was working for them. People act out when they think the world's not working for them. Now, we here have a consciousness where when we're upset, we don't go storming the Capitol building. So their acting out was a little further. I don't think there's anybody in this room who's murdered anybody, or who's maybe Grand Theft Auto or any of those things that might get you behind bars. But that happened because we don't live in a world that works for everyone. And I think that sometimes when we think about a world that works for everyone, we don't think about them. We think they just screwed up. That's their problem. They're in jail. And that won't get us there. That will not get us to a world that works for everyone by thinking, oh, well, they made their choices. Now they got to go to jail. We spend time digging deep into ourselves, but we also need to spend time delving into the heart of humanity, particularly the parts of humanity that we are unhappy with, that bring up upset in us by the way they behave. Because in a world that works for everyone, they'd be included. It needs to work for them too. Now, what I'm talking about for myself works a lot easier when who I'm dealing with is somebody I adore anyway, like my wife. I mean, I adore this woman. So being upset at her is about the stupidest thing I could be since of how much I adore her anyway. So getting back to a world that works for everyone, and when it comes to my wife and I and our own little world of our relationship, well, that's a pretty easy leap for me. A much tougher one is looking at those folks who stormed the Capitol building. And yet, if we believe truly in a world that works for everyone, where's the choice there? And my choice, my personal choice, is to continue to dive deeper into what is the truth about what's going on here. What has these people so upset? And what can be done to have them feel like the world is working for them? Because I know with absolute certainty that far beyond the people who actually stormed the Capitol, there may be millions who were rooting them on, who felt that way but didn't have, weren't going to act out like they did, who feel like this is not a world that works for me. And so when we sit in spiritual practice, it's really important to include those folks. Because otherwise, we're only talking about a world that works for those of us who are like us, who think the way we do. And that's not a world that works for everyone. Back to personal relationship. I don't know about you, but my wife and I, we don't agree on everything. We don't always agree on what's the most important priority in any given moment. So, in a world that works for everyone, in the world of my relationship with my wife, we have to sit down and work that out and say, how can this work for both of us? And what I find is the longer we're in relationship, the deeper we get with that. But sometimes it can feel like it's the same issue we're talking about, but we're really not, because we're on a different level of talking about it. I don't know if you've had that experience. I mean, I'm kind of sure at some point you have, that you were talking to somebody you cared about an issue that was between you, and it sounded like you were talking about the same issue that you've been talking about forever, except you're not the same people, because it's however long after the last time you talked about it. And so if you look at it as if it's the same issue being talked about in the same way, you are missing the choice to see the newness that must have arisen since the last time you talked about it, because neither of you are the same people. So having choice happens on many different planes here. I want to encourage you to anytime you're upset, ask yourself to look deeper. Ask yourself to remember that you are not a human, that whatever you're upset about is because you're thinking you are, and that in fact you are a spiritual being having a human experience. Now it's easy, you got skin and you got your face, and you touch yourself and you go, I feel pretty human. There's this feels pretty human right now. And this feels like a pretty human experience. You get a diagnosis, you feel like you're getting older. I know that my body certainly does not work the same way it did even 10 years ago. That the aches and pains, this and that. I get tired quicker. So it's, and in looking at all that, it sounds very human. But we are spiritual beings having a human experience that is a choice and allows our perception to shift at any point we want it to. But we got to want it. The thing that I know for myself is I want to. I want to shift my perception. That is my prime directive, besides love. Excuse me. Is that I want to see a bigger, deeper picture of whatever's going on. I don't even care what it is. I want to see more. I want to see bigger. I want to see deeper. I want to see it from a place of love. And because that's such a strong want in me, I go for that with whatever is going on all the time. And I encourage you to do that, to make that a prime directive, that anything that upsets you, that you get to a place where your default is, I need to look at this differently. And even if you can't figure out what that difference is, just asking the question, just putting forth the question of, I need to see this differently. What else is there to see, to feel, to experience? Just putting forth the question can bring out something new for you in choice. But when things are going on, you can also choose to dig in your heels and go, no, this is terrible. This is just terrible. This needs to be rutted out, and this is just terrible. That's a choice. But it won't ever, ever lead to a world that works for everyone. We need to get bigger in how we see things. We need to shift our perceptions to be the bigger ones. I used to complain about that a lot. How come I always got to be the bigger one? How come I'm the guy who always has to shift and be the bigger one? Why don't you shift first for a change? How come I always got to be the one to shift? And then I realized that's because that's what I've chosen to do in life, to be the one that shifts, to be the one that grows. My wife's made the same choice. She is a great model of that for me when she's upset, in terms of digging in, going, I need to see this differently. I love that about her. So we get to model that for each other, which of course, that's how you create a world that works for everyone. Is if everybody you're with people, you're constantly modeling, and then others around you see that you're modeling that shift of seeing it differently. But if you're in the crowd with everybody else going, oh, did you see what happened? That was just horrible. And you're too going, oh, yes, that was just horrible. Well, then you're not modeling the spiritual practice we stand for. Somebody in that group has got to be saying, well, there's more going on here. There's something larger at play that needs to be addressed, that needs compassion, that needs care, that needs love, that isn't being addressed for these people, isn't being addressed for this situation, that all these other people are standing around going, how horrible it is. You always have choice. You can always be the one to stand up and say, wait a minute, we really want a world that works for everyone, which means it's got to work for these guys too, whoever they are. Somebody's got to be the one to do that. I want to light a fire under your butts that you be that one in whatever group you're in, where everybody else is talking about how horrible things are or were or whatever. There's more. When we really want a world that works for everybody, it takes a new choice. It takes a new way of seeing. It takes a new way of being. And we can do that. We have the teaching. We have the know-how. We have the technology. We can be that every time. I love you. And I want to light that fire. Be that light. Be that one who remembers we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. Thank you. I love you.